Greetings and welcome to this edition of
Positronic Hypersonic.
I'm Barry P. Cook, and I want to talk to you about the latest episode of Star Trek Lower Decks. The penultimate episode of Season 4 was called The Inner Fight, which of course is a reference to the title of one of the best episodes, if not the actual best episode of Star Trek ever, The Inner Light from The Next Generation. As the episode begins, Boimler, Mariner, and T'Lyn are at a facility somewhere helping a team of scientists get their fence back up, their electric fence, so that they can continue to study a species of creature that's very dangerous for numerous reasons. When the fence that they just helped restore gets taken out, and Mariner unnecessarily risks her life to kick some ass and get it restored. T'Lyn finds this quite concerning, as do Boimler and the captain, since it's behavior she'd been exhibiting for a while, unnecessarily taking crazy risks. And for her part, the captain takes action by calling a meeting of the lieutenants, except for Mariner, to explain that in addition to targeting ships, the evil alien has now targeted specific ex-Starfleet officers, namely Beverly Crusher, 7 of 9, Thomas Riker, and Nick Locarno, which is interesting considering where we are on the timeline. And it turns out that the Cerritos has been tasked with locating Nick Locarno to keep him safe. But Tendi, Mariner, and Boimler will not be joining the Cerritos on this mission, as they will be handling a different mission at a remote communications array, I guess it was, that needs repairing as a way of keeping Mariner away from Nick Locarno, who it is feared would make her act even more crazy. When the Cerritos arrives at its destination looking for Locarno, they find the local authorities to be a bit abrasive, to say the least, as they witness a bounty hunter ship get better treatment. For some reason, a Klingon bird of prey attacks the lieutenants in their shuttle as they're leaving the station they were repairing, causing them to have to transport themselves off emergency style to the planet below, which was thought to be uninhabited. Mariner, of course, is quite riled up by this, to the concern of the others. It would seem that the planet is in fact inhabited, much to our lieutenant's surprise, but the inhabitants are not native. They're people from the stolen ships, including a Romulan, a Ferengi, and a Klingon, the latter of whom Mariner rushes in to fight on behalf of when he's tricked into a painful trap by the Romulan and the Ferengi. Back in the Cerritos, the captain takes a landing party to look for Locarno, and runs into similar unfriendly treatment there on the surface, while the creepy bounty hunter is welcomed more openly. The lieutenants find shelter and end up telling Mariner that the captain ordered them to keep her out of danger, which they fail at in the very next moment when Mariner runs out of the shelter to confront the Klingon who'd been temporarily trapped earlier, and she and the Klingon end up having to run for shelter after a bit of a fight in a different cave when a glass storm occurs. Mariner wants to continue fighting in the cave, but the Klingon says they can fight later when the storm ends. At this point, Mariner ends up confiding in the Klingon when he recognizes that she is fighting an inner fight with herself. And it turns out that this inner fight has to do with the fact that she was best friends with Ensign Sito, whom we know from Star Trek The Next Generation, at the Academy, and it changed her when Sito was murdered while being a spy, after having been posted to the Enterprise after the Academy, as did the Dominion War, all of which seemed so contrary to her to what Starfleet was supposed to be about, causing her to feel like being any higher up than an ensign would mean she'd have to order her friends into dangerous situations, which she doesn't want to do. The Klingon tells her that Ensign Sito would not want her to behave this way, and that she should honor her friend by living up to her duties as a lieutenant in pursuing her career, which causes Mariner to hug the Klingon, much to his dismay, and then introduce herself, at which point the storm ends, and the Klingon suggests they continue their fight, but Mariner suggests they work together to find a way off the planet after having established a bit of a rapport. Back on the other planet, the captain, Rutherford, and the security chief continue to look for Locarno, at which point the captain hilariously mistakes an alien for a puppet like the one used by Balok in the early TOS episode, The Corbomite Maneuver. Mariner and the Klingon come upon the other races fighting each other, and Mariner says they need to all work together, but the two Orions attack her, though she decides she will not fight them, and is saved by Tendi, who pulls rank on them as Orion royalty before Mariner is beamed away. We see that the captain had the chief engineer dress up as this crazy bounty hunter, as a sort of second way of making sure that they got the information they needed as to where Locarno was, in so much as if no one would cooperate with them because they were Starfleet, maybe they'd cooperate with the bounty hunter, who in this case was, of course, Starfleet, unbeknownst to everyone but the captain. And when they follow up the lead they get from that, they discover that Nick Locarno is not where he's supposed to be. And it seems like they realized what was actually going on with him, which turns out to be, well, let me keep giving you the breakdown. The remaining lieutenants, along with the members of the other races, tricked the bird of prey from earlier into coming close enough to their location with a signal from a converted satellite station on the planet, at which point they all physically attack it and get on board, whereupon the Klingon member of the group kills the Klingon captain and takes the ship, which it turns out Mariner is not aboard, because it turns out she's aboard the ship that's been doing all the stealing and kidnapping all season, which it turns out is piloted by Nick Locarno, who intends to get into some more trouble with Mariner. So I really thought this was a good episode. I really liked it because it wasn't one of those episodes that was predicated on a wacky premise. It was predicated on like a normal kind of Starfleet mission in a normal, situation. I mean, normal for Star Trek, where there's a bad guy that's been doing stuff. And because of that, the ship has to go and do this particular thing. While at the same time, another member of the crew who's been having some difficulties is sent on a different mission, which winds them up in a situation that they have to solve in a way that, deals with the human condition. So I thought it was very cool. And it's growth for the Mariner character, which I'm glad we're finally getting because, over the first 3 seasons, she did have some growth. And then when she got this promotion, she seemed to kind of backtrack. And now we know why. And it kind of makes perfect sense. And the way that it was resolved with the Klingon telling her, you're going about it the wrong way. You need to take a different tack and honor your friend by doing your duty and making a difference that way, which she's receptive to because it makes sense, which is great. And she gets past her situation, or at least makes a step at getting past her situation. So I thought that was very cool and very well done. And that it did what Star Trek always does, which is shines a light on, as I said, the human condition. I thought her dialogue when she was talking to the rest of the kidnapped people was excellent. I thought it was great that she said, no, I'm not going to fight you. And then having Tendi pull rank on the other Orion was pretty cool. And the great thing is that both the A plot and the B plot were tied into the same overall plot of the season, where Mariner and the lieutenants met the kidnapped people from all the ships that had been attacked by who it turns out is Nick Locarno, which the Cerritos was sent to discover. It will be interesting to see why Nick Locarno has been doing what he's doing, where he got this ship, what he wants with Mariner of all people. And my guess is we're going to get exactly that in the season finale next week. I found it fun that, Nick Locarno is back. Of course, he's played by Robert Duncan McNeil, who played Nick Locarno on TNG before playing Tom Paris on Voyager and subsequently on the Lower Decks. So it's very funny. And I was very intrigued by the fact that they mentioned that Beverly Crusher is ex-Starfleet. And of course, Thomas Riker, but that's not a big deal in the same way that Beverly being ex-Starfleet is, because she was just on Picard as part of Starfleet at the end anyway. So now I have to go and look at the different years of the timeline to figure out if that makes sense.
Okay, so I looked it up, and it turns out that Star Trek Lower Decks Season 1 takes place in 2380, which theoretically would make Season 4 taking place in 2384 at the latest, while Star Trek Picard Season 3 takes place in either 2401 or 2402, depending on who from the production crew you listen to. So, at best, this is a period where Beverly is out of Starfleet because she's in that between period from when we saw her at the end of Nemesis and at the end of Picard Season 3, and she's running around with her son doing what they were doing. So that's fine, but I don't see how it covers Seven of Nine, whom was not in Starfleet until the events of Star Trek Picard Season 3, or the end of Star Trek Picard Season 2, which is in either 2400 or 2401, again, depending on who from the production team you listen to. So it seems like the dialogue there needed a little tweaking, at least as it relates to this one character, Seven of Nine.
But yeah, I thought that this week's episode, like last week's episode, was very good. And not just because it was very funny and outrageous and makes you laugh in a loving way at Star Trek. It was good in a different way because the story had meat to it and meaning. And, it's not to say that Lower Decks doesn't ever have any meaning. It does, but it's usually light on that compared to how heavy it is on the goofy shenanigans, which again, I enjoy, but I liked this a lot better because it was more like regular Star Trek, even though there were jokes put in there. And I really hope they do more of this if the show gets a 5th season, which, as I understand it, is not a done deal, though we'll have to wait to hear officially. But anyway, that's it. This was a great episode, and there's not a lot more to say, so I'm going to get out of here. I'll be back to do a breakdown and review of the next episode, the season finale, once it's released. Until I return, I wish you peace and long life.